Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Florida Buzz. I included this in another video, but just to give you a direct link to it, kind of break it down a little better, I wanted to go over my timing cover install. So pretty much it's pretty simple. The main things you want to make sure of is you have all your bolts correctly. So you've got your long ones up top that go through the water pump and actually hold the water pump to the timing cover. They also do seat the timing cover. Below that, you've got this guy right here, which is a shorter bolt. They're usually, I'm sorry, I replaced this bolt, but it's a short bolt in length. This is its twin. There's actually two of these. I've got the original bolts over there in a bag. I kept this one in particular because there's actually a bracket that holds your transmission cooler lines to this bolt. Otherwise, I would have used a brand new bolt on this one as well. Now on this side, this is just a normal stud. It's just a standard bolt. I went ahead and replaced it with a new bolt just because I was worried about the age and condition of it snapping off into the block. But I have the original one over there again, and then you've got this one down here. So in total, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You've got 8 bolts in total holding the timing cover together. The water pump's kind of in the way, but on the water pump, you've got 1, 2, 3. This one's a pain. It's a real pain. Usually there's actually a hex key indent in this top bolt because it's so hard to get to with this balancer in the way, or I'm sorry, with this pulley in the way. But this is an AutoZone kit. This is their like high performance water pump, like their best quality in-house brand one. Now I can't contest to how long or strong it will hold up or last, but it looked like the best option from the options I had. So that's the water pump I went with. It was the AutoZone kit. It comes with the gasket already pre-stuck to the water pump. That helps out a lot. It comes with all new bolts and hardware. And like I said, it only comes with these two, and then these 3. So like I said, you do get 2 new timing cover bolts out of it. Like I said, these bolts were on the older side, so I went ahead and replaced those anyways. But let me give you an idea. The bag is actually over here. It's this yellow bag. This is actually what they come in when you buy the kit from AutoZone for the water pump. So, like I said, you've got 2 of these down low. This is the longer one. Both of these go at the bottom. They're for a transmission. Your transmission cooler lines have a little bracket on them. You really only need one. There's 2 bolt holes in it, or I'm sorry, it's this one. Yeah, there's 2 of these, but I mean, you see the condition of that grimy ass bolt, guys? I don't know why it's not picking that up. It's kind of fuzzy. Let me try clearing my camera off real fast. Give me a second. Okay, we're back. And it's still not doing nothing. Let me try and zoom out. I might be zoomed in. Yep, that's what it was. So that's the bolt. And if you can tell anything, these are really grimy and old. So there was actually 2 of them. That was the better condition of the 2. Like I said, there's the transmission bracket for your cooler lines actually goes onto these. So I'm going to need another nut on top of this that I haven't grabbed yet, which is probably pretty dumb. I should have grabbed that already. So then aside from that, this is the stud. This is the longest of the studs for the timing cover besides the water pump ones. This one went here. So what I did was I just went to Ace Hardware and I matched up a new bolt so I can make it, nice and purty. This one's new. This one's new. Like I said, I was going to do all new bolts, but you need that stud to hold them brackets still, because if you do, hardcore off-roading like I do, the last thing you want to do is shake the hell out of your transmission cooler lines, because they will spring a leak. I mean, they're not bulletproof. So anyways, these are the bolts I replaced them with. To give you an idea of the length, they're pretty much identical in length. If anything, the newer bolts are a little bit longer, but they do the job just fine. So the torque specification for these bolts are 30 foot-pounds. It's weird, guys, because when I set all this up and I put everything in the bag, when I set this thing up and I put everything together and I torqued them down with my really expensive Matco torque wrench, it seemed like they weren't going to 30. I don't know why. They wouldn't go to 30. So what I ended up doing was I took my 3/8 Milwaukee Impact, which is my go-to for everything. I mean, if you guys do this daily or weekend warriors, guys, this is a very good tool to invest in. You can get these off eBay for about 100 and change, maybe 120 at the highest. And then it's always good with these Impacts to get the bigger batteries. You don't have to get a 6.0. They do make 4.0s. The 4.0s are good. The 6.0s just last forever. That's why I like them. But you could also get a 2.0. You'll just be charging it a lot because this gun, even though it's brushless, it does it does pull a lot of juice. As you can see over here, I'm a huge Milwaukee fan. This isn't even half my collection. I've got a ton more stuff in my toolbox at work. I might even add toolbox reviews into my channel. I'm not sure yet because I have 2 Snap-on toolboxes. They're both pretty decent size. My newest one is a 68 Epic, and it's a phenomenal box. So anyways, getting a little bit off track. So after you get all these bolts in, the biggest thing I wanted to talk about was on the timing cover side, where the timing cover gasket, remember it's one directional, so you don't want to lube up the gasket and throw it on the water pump and have it stick there because you might have it backwards. So you want to line up the gasket, you want to put some of the bolts through. Usually the bolts will actually hold the gasket once you thread them through it. All right, as long as you don't push them through like that and, you know, break some of the gasket out, they should hold still. So the main thing with this gasket is well, the main thing with any kind of gasket, you don't want to overdo it with RTV. More is not always better. I've learned that the hard way. So with that being said, what I like to do for these timing covers, if both my services were perfect and flawless, I wouldn't have used any RTV, to be honest with you guys. Maybe a very tiny bit around the water jacket, but that's it. But my problem that I ran into is around my water jackets, my cooling jackets, basically right behind this guy and right behind that guy. There's 2 little circle ports. Now mine, on the outer edge of the port, were really like chewed up, kind of deteriorated. You know, they were kind of, you know, broken down a little bit. So I definitely needed to use RTV just to ensure a really good seal, because the last thing you want to do is pull the pan off, pull the timing cover off, redo the gasket, and then boom, it starts leaking. So the main thing I'm going to recommend to you guys is take a very thin film, very, very thin. I mean, as thin as you can without you thinking, that's not enough. And you're just going to coat the back side of the gasket. The side of the gasket that's going to adhere to the block is the only side you want to add RTV to, unless your timing cover is super chewed up. But I highly doubt that, because the timing covers are aluminum and these blocks are cast iron. Cast iron will deteriorate from coolant and you know, foreign objects and, you know, rust and everything else. Cast iron will over time deteriorate and break down. Aluminum will not. So with that being said, I really would advise you guys just to clean the hell out of the timing cover side before you put the gasket on. Make sure it's nice and smooth and flush. Then put the gasket on. Then put some RTV on there. Then slide it onto the block. And you want to do this in a slow motion. You want to just kind of guide it in. You want to get these bolts started first. Well, actually, the best way to do it, if you're not a pro like me, or I shouldn't really say a pro, that's kind of bragging, but if you're not an everydayer and you're a do-it-yourselfer on the weekends, without the water pump in place, the bolts you really want to start with, you want to guide it in slowly so your RTV doesn't get everywhere and make a mess. I would say start this guy first, because remember, this won't be in the way. The water pump won't be in the way. I would start this guy first. Then I would come over here, start this guy, and remember, you want to keep it off the block as much as you can, because as soon as that block starts touching, that gasket maker is going to go everywhere. And if your motor's real nice, you know, or you take pride in your work, you don't want to make a huge mess, or you don't want to wipe off your RTV and have it end up in the cooling system, or have it end up, making it leak because it didn't seal with RTV in the right spot. You know, make like a crease or something. So I would say start with this bolt. Start with that bolt, get them hand started, start this bolt, start that bolt, just slowly guide it in. You know, don't torque them down yet. I would wait till you get the water pump on and then torque them all down. And I would go in a crisscross pattern just like you do head bolts. That's the best way to do it. That's how I did it. And another thing I really want to mention, that I'm kind of going back on what I said, but right here along the top, when you get these bolts started, right, and you put this gasket on, there's nothing really holding the timing cover gasket to this top part. And what I noticed was mine was actually starting to bow. So let's say it sits flat like that, right? Well, what mine was doing, once I started to bolster it, you know, to just hold the gasket in place when I applied the RTV, the top was actually starting to bow. And it was actually pushing away from the timing cover instead of laying flat like that. So what I did was I took a very, very little, I mean the smallest amount of RTV. Let me see if I can give you an example. This should still be wet over here. You see that tip? Half of that I took, and I literally just did a quick line on the top of the timing cover, but super, super thin, guys, because what's going to happen is if you put, this is my rule of thumb, if you put RTV on a gasket, you have to put it all over, because what you're going to end up with is instead of it mating flush, some spots are going to bow out, or some spots, even though they look flush, they'll be bowed because it's not an even gasket sealing material. It just goes where it can, and it pushes out where it can, and it pushes in where it can. So what I recommend to everybody is if you're going to use some on the side of the gasket where you're not using it all over, use as little as you can. And that's exactly what I did. I took the smallest amount and I just literally went whoop from about there to there, just to dab it right in the middle, kind of like I was saying with the bolts, just to hold the gasket still. So I did a very, very, very small amount. Then I applied, like I said, gasket maker all around the outside. You can see where it squeezed out. And like I said, guys, I didn't use a lot because after I applied it, I actually leveled it out with my fingers. And I made it as thin as I could, just so I could get that very little bit of squeeze. Because you see on some spots it didn't even squeeze out. You really don't want it to squeeze out, because what happens is if you're seeing it squeeze out on this side, it's squeezing out on that side. And the last thing you want to do is have gasket makers squeeze onto your timing chain, or squeeze in, and then the oil breaks it off, and then it ends up in your timing chain, it ends up in your main bearings, it ends up inside your motor. It's not a good idea, guys. It's nasty stuff. So that's the biggest thing, guys. And then also, this guy usually comes as a fixed fitting on like the cheaper water pumps, like the Valucraft and stuff like that. This one you actually have to install. Also, if you can see, I actually just redid this. Take a very small amount of RTV, just enough to go on your fingers. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna hold this with one hand. You're gonna have the RTV, I'll take that back. Here's a better example. So you're gonna take this with one hand, right? Let me give you an example with a bolt. Guys, I'm sorry, this is so hard to do by myself with my hands. Okay, so let me set you up this way so you can see. All right, so you're gonna take the bolt like this, or in that case, the fitting. All right, you're gonna put the RTV on. You're gonna take the RTV, okay? You're gonna put it on long ways, okay, just like that. Then you're gonna take your finger and you're gonna spin that bolt on your hand, and you're just gonna evenly mush it into those threads. So that's a very, very thin coat, because you don't realize it now, but when you squeeze that fitting into those threads, and those threads mate together, it's gonna push that RTV everywhere. You would be surprised how little you really need to add, and you want to add it as low as you can, because that fitting doesn't really thread in that far. Or another method you could do that I don't really recommend is you could take the RTV, put it on your finger, and smear it into the female part of the threads. Because remember, this is the male part, it's threading into the female part of the water pump. What you could also do is, or you could use Thread Locker, just something that goes on wet and it's gonna harden and make coolant seal, especially under pressure, because that's a pressurized system. And the pressures can get pretty high in those cooling systems. So you're gonna take that RTV very lightly, put it on long ways. Then you're gonna take your finger, or your finger and your thumb, or your finger and your index finger, whatever's best for you. You're just gonna spin that on there, just like that. And it's gonna smooth it in so well, it'll be a perfect coat. And then after that, you just thread it in. All the excess on your fingers, just keep a rag ready like I do, and just wipe it off your fingers. It'll come right off. If you want, to go even overkill after you smear it on those threads nice and good to where you feel comfortable with it, you can even set it down, let it cure for about 30 seconds to a minute. You can let it cure for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever you want to do. Don't let it cure for 5 or more though, because after 5 minutes, it's gonna activate, and it's not gonna thread in. It's gonna turn into the Jello. You're gonna have to peel it all out of those threads and start over. But honestly, guys, that's the best advice I can give you on that timing cover, and that's coming from me personally, being trained on this, watching YouTube videos myself when I'm bored in my free time. That's actually why I developed this channel. Especially with this virus, man. We take our freedom and our liberties for granted, until we get locked into our houses. Now, mind you, I know I could go outside at any time, but down here in Florida, I'm in Brevard County, St. Cloud, which is in Orlando, which is about 40 miles west from me, because I'm right on the East Coast, right near the ocean. The ocean's about 5 minutes from my house. They're taking people to jail for being outside. So I spend a lot of time on Facebook, watching Joe Rogan podcast, Brandon Schaub's Food Truck Diaries. I'm a huge MMA fan. So I spent a lot of time on YouTube, and I figured what better way could I contribute to something I enjoy so much than to start my own channel. So again, I'm not Albert Einstein. I'm not a certified trained professional on everything I'm coaching you guys on. I'm just a DIY guy that turned it into a professional career 11 years ago, and I've come pretty far with this stuff. I'll probably be doing it for the rest of my life. I love doing it. I enjoy doing it. The only other thing I love as much as I enjoy working on motors is probably, you know, MMA or motorcycles or toolboxes, tools, stuff like that. I'm a huge tool fanatic. So like I said, this kind of just dawned on me in the last couple days, but when my shop opens back up and things kind of get back to normal, I'll probably start doing some toolbox video reviews and let you guys know what I think. I've owned Matco carts, I've owned Snap-on boxes. I own 2 Snap-on boxes. One is their pretty much Mac Daddy. There's only one size above mine. It's got the hutch on it, the whole 9 yards. We'll touch base on that in another video, guys. I love getting off track. I just love talking till the end of time. I apologize. So anyways, yeah, next we're going to do some other videos, and I'll see you guys then. Take it easy, guys.